Hello friends, today in this tutorial I will basically implement the difference between authentication and authorization. So I will basically take an example out of it in JavaScript and I will be showing a simple HTML form here, and I will be showing you the difference between these two terms which is authentication and authorization. So you can see guys, basically this is a simple form here. We have authentication form here. Let me just disable this extension. Let me just disable it and refresh. So you will basically see guys, there is a simple form here. Here you can enter a username and password, and then we have a simple login button, and then we have basically authorization tab here. Here basically you can check the authorization. So basically the difference between authentication and authorization is that by authentication you actually tells whether a individual is authenticated or not, whether he has the credentials of, let's suppose, correct username or password or not. While authorization means that let's suppose you have certain files inside your website or certain permissions that you need to give. So that authorization simply means that you need to give access to those files to which individuals. You need to grant permissions to which individuals. So you have various roles out there inside your website. One such role is admin role. So in role-based authorization, there are various roles out there that you can grant to individuals, especially in live chat. Whenever you have in YouTube live chat, you have seen moderators. Live chat moderators are there in YouTube live chat, so they moderate the chat. So that example is also there. So let me just implement this example. So if you see in the form right here, we have made these users here. Either you can enter these two users here, Kane and John, and we have the password written right here. So basically if you write, we have static two users implemented right here, and if you write this information, let's suppose if I provide the username Kane and then provide the password, click on login. So it will say that you are authenticated as Kane. And if you see, basically we have defined two user roles right here. We have defined the first, Kane is a user and while John is an admin. So if I basically now click the check authorization button right here guys, if I click that button, check authorization, while we are authenticated as Kane, so now it is saying that Kane is authorized as a user. So he is not an admin. So admin users, as you all know guys, they can remove content, they can add content, but a normal user can't do that because they are not authorized. So now what we can do is that now if I enter this one, this username, click on, and now if I check authorization, you will see that John is authorized as an admin. So you can see that guys, this is a simple example. Let me now code this example from scratch just to implement this if you don't understand. So here basically we have a heading here. Welcome to the secure web app. So basically we have a simple form here. We will basically first of all have an authentication form. Here we can enter a username, input type text, and we can basically give it an ID here, and basically placeholder your username, so like this, and break tag, and then we can say that label password, and here the user will enter the password, so input type password, and then we can simply say here ID password, and we can say that placeholder enter your password. And then guys, we will have a button here we will simply say login button here. We will simply give it an on-click listener here. So when we click the button, we will basically execute this method, which is authenticate. So right here inside our JavaScript code, guys, basically, uh, after this section, we will have another section for the authorization. So when you are authenticated, we will have a second button for the authorization. So this div authorization, so which permissions you have. So we will basically have an ID given to it, auth status, and then we will basically have a button to actually check the authorization. So we will say check authorization. So we will also basically execute a function whenever this button is clicked, which is check authorization. So and now in the JavaScript, guys, what we will say is that const users, and basically here we will define an array of users, guys. The first username, you can define as many users as you want. The password, it's basically an object, yeah, with the username and password. You can have another username here like this. So we have defined two sets of users, guys, that you can basically use in your authentication. And similarly, we can define two roles. Either we can define the Kane is the user, and while John is an admin. So you can define more roles out there depending upon. So this needs to be capital K and capital J. So depending upon more roles, you can define them. We have defined this right here. So after this, basically we will declare let authenticated user is null here by default if you launch this application. And now we will actually write that function whenever we click the authenticate method, authenticate button right here. So we have given a on-click listener to it whenever we click the login button. So this function will execute. So right here now we will basically get the username, whatever username the user has written. And similarly, we will also get the password value as well. So now we will basically compare this value, whether this value is, so we will find out the user, if the user has entered correct information or not. We will compare the username. If u.username triple equal to the username which is entered and u.password triple equal to the password which is there. In that case, our user has been found out. Basically, it will return either true or false. If it is true, in that case, our authenticated user will be equal to the user dot username. So authenticated user by default is null right here. So we are basically using the find method, guys, to actually find out from the array of users we have declared. We are comparing this username with both these usernames. If they entered the correct one, then this authenticated user will be there. And after that, we can simply change the status of the authentication. We can say that auth form. We will basically display, change the hide that display to none. And then we will simply say authorization style dot display block. So what it will do, guys, if I refresh right now, so basically, if you entered a wrong username, wrong password, click on login, nothing will happen because you haven't entered the correct one. So if I entered the correct one, so now your this one will be hidden and now this will be shown to you. Authorization button right here. So if I enter John here, you will see the same thing will happen. You can see that. So now we just need to basically So we also need to write something on here, which is document.getElement by ID. Just wait, document.getElement by ID, auth status, and here we can write something by using text content property. And here we can simply use the backtick symbol and just write here authenticated as the username. We can just write here authenticated user. So what it will do, guys, if you basically run this now, just write John and 1 2 3 4 5 6, you will see authenticated as John. And now there is a button out there to check the authorizations, whether it's a user or a admin. So for that, we also need to write the else statement as well, guys. We will simply say authentication failed, check username and password. So in that case, if you entered a wrong username or wrong password, we will say authentication failed, check username and password. So now this is complete. Now we need to basically write our authorization. So difference between authentication and authorization. This is authentication, guys, where we have a set of users defined. So in the production level application, guys, these users will be coming from a database. We will not be declaring these usernames in an array here. These will be coming from a database. And simply in authentication, what we do, guys, we have a username and password field, and we have a login form, and we simply check if the credentials match here from the database. So if they match, then the user is an authenticated user. Now comes the authorization part. Authorization simply differs from authentication, guys. Authorization simply means that you have defined a certain roles. You can see we have defined users. Kane is a user while John is an admin inside our array. You can define your own roles inside your application whenever you are designing it. So now we need to basically write our authorization function. So when we click the check authorization function, so this function will automatically execute. So check authorization function. So inside this function, guys, we will first of all check that if the user is authenticated. For authorization, guys, you must complete authentication first. You can't do authorization before authentication. So authentication is must for authorization. And then here we will basically user roles, we will basically check, we will pass the authenticated user, simply check which role is assigned to this user. If it is Kane, then it is a user. If it's John, it's an admin user. So we will basically get our role. So if I just alert this value, a user role. So if you just refresh now your application, if I John here, click on check authorization, you can see admin. Admin is returned to us, guys, because this is an admin user. So in this way, now if I basically entered, this will be a normal user because you can see user, he is not an admin user. So this is the difference between authentication and authorization, guys. So we can, instead of alerting the user, we can simply write this document dot get element by ID auth status text content. In the backtick symbol, we can simply write authenticated user is authorized as an admin. For that to happen, guys, we need to simply have a if condition. We just need to say if user role is triple equal to admin. In that case only, we will have this if condition. Then it will be a admin user. In the else block, we will simply change this else if. We will write else if user role is equal to user. In that case, we will say document.get element by ID auth status text content is authenticated user is authorized as a user, as an user. So lastly, we will again have the else block. In that case, we will simply write here so inside this we will simply say that authenticated user does not have authorization for this action. That's all. So we have tackled all these three situations, guys, whether the user is an admin, whether the user is a normal user, whether user is not authenticated and not authorized. So all the three situations have been tackled. So if I now write John here, so John is authorized as an admin. You can see that. So if I entered any other user here, this will be a normal user authenticated as Kane. You can see that. So if I entered wrong password, nothing happens. So in this way, guys, you can simply so this is the way, guys, you can do this. So authorization and authentication. Hopefully you will understand the difference between these two terms. And if you are watching it for the very first time, guys, please hit that like button, subscribe the channel, and I will be seeing you in the next video. Until then, thank you very much.